hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we grow again. It is a fantabulous Friday here in the studio as I record, and so grateful, as always, to be back with you guys. It has been, really sunny few days here in Southern California. Has me feeling like the universe is smiling on us. Actually, I saw something, I believe it's the 16th of this month, where a couple planets and the moon is going to be like a crescent, so it looks like a smiley face. And I thought that was interesting timing-wise that that's supposed to happen, because it was the 15th of March that we went into sort of lockdown mode here in Los Angeles, at least. And so, 2 months later, I think it's starting to lift. Some of the restrictions are lifting, which would be 2 months, after the 15th, which is what our current stay-at-home order is through. And then on the 16th, there's going to be a smile in the sky. So I'm going to go ahead and run with that as a good sign. I don't need much of an excuse, as you guys know. And speaking of the universe smiling on you, I am going to read again here from the Big Book of Angel Stories, which I think last time I did it was a few weeks ago. As you guys know, I love good story time and something that's inspirational that, lets us know that there are so many of these stories out there where people have intervention from angelic entities or spirit guides or something from beyond the veil, apparently, or so it would seem. And this book by Jenny Smedley, The Big Book of Angel Stories, has a bunch of very short stories, and I just really find it inspiring to read them and share with you guys from time to time, as I like to do with different books that it makes sense to just, pick up and read from anywhere. And I'm going to do that here in a moment. Before I jump into that, one thing that I have been working on in this very interesting time of juggling and refocusing and reshifting. Those of you who have been listening for a while know we had to pause the retreats, at least temporarily, here at the Mystic Manor. We're actually doing month-to-month sublease type of situations to make up for it, just temporarily is the plan. So if anyone is interested in that, you can send me an email, brandon@positivehead.com, and we can chat about that to see if it's in alignment. And the other thing that I've been doing, I have a friend that, I want to share with you guys because there's a way some of you could possibly benefit. I have a friend who I've known for almost 20 years, a very interesting character who raised about $100 million for his biotech company back in the early 2000s. He's essentially a family friend that I hadn't talked to in a very long time, and he reached out to me and has been doing a ton of stuff in overseas in China for the last decade, gone 50 times. And so he has supply chains set up for all this, medical supply stuff that's needed. All of, you have the government like seizing orders for the states of, masks and gloves and all that sort of stuff. But he has it set up where it's basically where people don't have to pay for the products until they receive them. So he's doing some massive deals with like the state of Texas, like 10 million masks right now, for example. So he asked, because, I have some background running, sales organizations and things like that. And my brother and I have a company together where it's, travel related. And of course, that's on pause, just like the retreats here. So we have employees that are kind of like twiddling their thumbs. And so he reached out to me and said, look, maybe repurpose your guys and they can help us to, find people who need this stuff that, of course, is helping with the pandemic. So we have decided to do a little bit of that, and I wanted to throw it out there to you guys because if you know anyone who's like a hospital administrator or works in local, state government or federal government, there's so many places where all this product is a need, and there's all kinds of BS out there. Whereas with this setup, once again, people don't, the buyers don't pay until they actually get their stuff from China. And I don't know about you guys, but when you talk about some of these deals being multi-millions of dollars, sending that over to China and hoping you get it back is not something I would want to do. So anyway, because of his connections and whatnot, it's set up in a very safe way. So if you know anyone that, if medical suppliers, local state governments, universities, big corporations, they're all going to need tons of these products ongoing as the requirements to have masks, I don't think are going to go away for a long time. So if you know anyone, he actually has it set up too, where there's a referral fee. You get a referral fee if someone that you refer over ends up buying. And when you're talking about deals like, right now, the one with Texas is like $20 million. So 5% of whatever the company's take is. So it can be very sizable. I just want to throw it out to you guys because I know a lot of you out there are out of jobs and looking for some way to sort of make it in this weird, wild world we live in right now. So you can go to StarRockMed, StarRockMed.com. That's a little site we put up to help run his sales, division and reach out and to help facilitate some of these referrals. And there's a form you can fill out, and then that tracks that it came from you. And then if something comes from it, you get a percentage of it. And like I said, some of these deals are massive, so could be a cool thing. And you help out. Everyone involved is ultimately benefited. So I just wanted to throw that out to you guys before I jump into reading from the Big Book of Angel Stories. This is the chapter that's all on angel rescues. It's called Angel Rescuers, and they're very short, and I'm going to read a few of them here. This first one I'm going to read from is Kirk's story, and Kirk's story goes a little something like this. I was walking home late one night, a little tipsy, I admit. I had to cross a wide road junction made up of several different carriageways and road directions. I crossed where I could and continued along an exit lane where people weren't really supposed to walk. I found myself walking along a very narrow pavement, only about 18 inches wide, against the oncoming traffic. To my right was a high curving wall, which held the bank back. I could have turned back, should have, but you know how it is. You just tend to think you can't be bothered and carry on. I didn't think the drink had affected my balance too much, but suddenly I felt myself tipping sideways into the road. I just knew my days, minutes were numbered at that point because the traffic was nonstop fast and literally inches away. Suddenly, someone shoved me backwards so hard that I swayed back out of danger and came up hard against the retaining wall of the road. There was no one else there, though. Once I'd recovered from what I'm sure was angelic intervention, I walked carefully sideways along the path, clinging to the wall as if it was 100 feet up in the air. I might not have been given a second chance. There's a lot of those sorts of stories where someone, they get grabbed or pulled or shoved, or it's a lot. It's interesting when you see like the repeating sort of scenarios. To me, it really adds some validity to it when people from all walks of life have a similar, there's a similar thread there, right? All right, Terry's story. This happened one Friday evening after I'd got drunk with a group of friends. I was pretty out of it, sort of knowing what was going on, but not really having any common sense about anything. I felt invincible, I guess, a bit like Superman. In those days, I did tend to go too far. I ended up at the train station waiting to get a train the couple of miles home. No one else was waiting on my platform, so after a while I thought I'd just walk home along the tracks and not bother waiting for a train. The tracks went right behind my house, so I knew I couldn't get lost, and that was the only worry I had. The thought of a train coming along never crossed my mind. I jumped down and immediately some girls on the other platform started screaming at me to get back up. I turned and was immediately blinded by the headlights of an oncoming train. Then it was me who screamed. My legs weren't working too well, and there was no way I could get to safety in time. Right then, a man landed beside me on the tracks. I had no idea where he'd come from because there hadn't been anyone else on my platform seconds before. Suddenly, everything went into slow motion and there was near silence, like when your ears have popped and everything sounds fuzzy and far away. I could still see the train coming, but it had slowed down and I felt that I was walking through quicksand. Then the man grabbed me and I felt myself rising up. Suddenly, all the noise and movement roared back into the station and I found myself swaying on the platform as the nonstop train shot past inches away from me. There was no sign of the man and I felt like crying. He had to have been hit. He jumped down to save me and he'd been killed. I felt sick as I watched the train fly by, unable to snatch my eyes away, waiting for the inevitable sight of blood and gore and knowing that my life had been saved, but also ruined by that reckless stranger's courageous act. How would I live with the guilt? My breath was sobbing in my throat as the train cleared the station. And then I couldn't believe it. There was nothing there. The clean rails sparkled in the station lights with not a blood stain in sight. The girls were still standing on the other platform, staring at me in disbelief. I ran for the bridge. I had to ask them what they'd seen, but by then the train had pulled in, and by the time my drunk and shocked legs had carried me over the bridge, it was too late. They'd gone. There was only one explanation as far as I was concerned. I had been saved by my guardian angel. I stopped getting drunk after that day, and maybe, just maybe, that was what it was all about. Wow, speaking of similar threads, the two drunk guys getting saved. All right, this is Jordan's story. When we were visiting the USA, we were unfortunate enough to get caught up in a store robbery. We couldn't believe it when we talked about it afterwards. There we were, thousands of miles away from home on holiday, and we really were in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 men wearing rubber masks rushed into the store and grabbed my dad, shoving him onto the floor. I was terrified and tried to go to him, but they made me lie down too. The next thing I knew, there were sirens going off. I was even more scared by then because, of course, American cops have guns, and I thought we'd get caught in the crossfire. It didn't quite happen that way. One of the gunmen pulled me to my feet, and I knew I was going to be used as a hostage. He stood me up against the wall and yelled to the cops that he'd kill me if they didn't let him go. Of course, they wouldn't do it, and I almost passed out when he pointed the gun at me, and I could see the hammer rising up, just as I'd seen on TV, only this was real, and I was about to be shot. I could hear my dad yelling, but my whole world had shrunk to the gun barrel. I thought I could see the bullet coming out, and then it did. I was dead, no question. Then suddenly I felt a pressure building around me. It pushed me against the wall. At first I thought I'd been shot, but I hadn't been. The pressure got harder and I felt squashed, crushed. There was a pop, and the man with the gun was lying on the floor bleeding. He wasn't dead, just wounded in the neck. Police told me later that the bullet had ricocheted from something behind me, and a chance in a million meant that it had hit the man. I don't believe that for a second, and neither does my dad, who says I was surrounded by white light when the gun went off, and it was so bright he couldn't keep looking at it. We both know that, for whatever reason, I had angels around me. Lindy's story. I know I have my guardian angel around me all the time, and he has been looking after me to the point where I can become quite carelessly complacent while driving. One day I was driving along a familiar route home, and I had to make a left turn across an intersecting road. People who are not familiar with the suburb where I grew up don't realize that there are 2 roads intersecting right before a T-junction, and on many occasions I've seen near misses between vehicles. As I was driving, I was singing along to the radio, not paying any attention to the road and going quite fast to boot. Suddenly I heard a voice say, "Stop!" and I immediately braked. I was just going around the blind corner, and as I did, there in front of me, and about to cross my path, was a car driven by a learner driver. She stopped also, and for a moment we sat there looking at each other. Then I waved her on because she had right of way. I got goosebumps and thanked my angel because if he hadn't told me to stop, I would have T-boned this car. I've had many instances where I've been driving and heard a voice tell me to slow down, change lanes, stop, etc. And if I hadn't listened, I would have been in an accident. I even got told by a clairvoyant some years back that I should pay more attention while driving because my angel was getting sick of looking out for me, and one day he would have had enough. That was an eye-opener for me. Yeah, that's instantly what I thought of when I heard this. It's like, oh, I've gotten complacent because they saved me so much. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'd be testing those waters if I were you, Lindy. All right, here's Lynn's story. I was 16 at the time, and I was going out with this guy who was in the RAFF, Royal Australian Air Force. His best mate was also a RAFie and lived down the road from my house. My boyfriend came from a RAF base in Sydney and would travel up a lot to hang out with his best mate who was stationed here in the Newcastle area. In fact, that's how I met my boyfriend in the first place. Gary was my boyfriend's name. I later married him, but lost him in an accident 3 years after we were married and when I was 8 months pregnant with our son. Dave was his best mate's name. Dave had a girlfriend by the name of Robin who came from a town up the coast. It was Easter time, and the Sydney Royal Easter Show was on, so Dave, Gary, and I were going to go up to Robin's town to go on a coach trip with her from there to the Sydney show. My mom was a bit worried about it, but she eventually agreed to me going. Finally, we were all set, so we left from my home and went to a petrol station in my suburb to fill up with fuel for the trip to Robin's, which was about an hour and a half away. I was sitting in the back waiting for the boys to come back to the car, and I was feeling a bit weird. I was known to have these feelings, and as I sat there, I was saying to myself, it's all okay. We have money, we have food, we have fuel. It's all fine. We will be fine. Then I went to put on my seatbelt to be ready to leave. But as I went to put it on, a male voice inside my head said, don't put it on, which was very strange because we have the use of seatbelts drummed into us. But when you hear something like that, someone talking to you inside your head, you can't help but obey. I felt uneasy then, and it felt so weird to have heard a voice in my head. Anyway, the boys came back. I kept my seatbelt off, which felt a bit wrong, and off we went. Everything was going along normally, but I was feeling anxious and just wanted to get there and be safe as the strange feeling I'd been having was getting stronger. We were going through a place called Raymond Terrace, and just outside that, where the freeway restarted, was an area called the Mad Miles. It was called that because once everyone got out of Raymond Terrace, the highway opened up and everyone used to just put their foot down and go, go, go. As it was Easter, the traffic was incredibly heavy coming down towards Newcastle. We were going north, but the southbound traffic was bumper to bumper, very, very heavy, though still moving at a decent pace. I smoked at the time and I was nervous. I took a cigarette out and was about to light it when I just had this incredibly strong feeling not to do so. I didn't hear a voice this time, but I might as well have because the force that was stopping me wasn't me. I put the cigarette away and was getting really scared as there were a lot of trucks going in the opposite direction and every time one went past I'd cringe. I was stressed. Then all of a sudden Gary yelled to Dave and pointed to the front of Dave's car. All he got out was, "Watch out for the..." Then all I knew was there was a huge crunch, a flip, and a twist, and we ended up spinning down the road on the roof of the car upside down. People who've almost died sometimes say they saw their life pass before their eyes. Well, I really did, and it was incredible. As I was tumbling around in the back of the car, seatbeltless, I could see my life pass before my eyes, from when I was a baby all the way to where I was then. It was like looking at negatives from a camera. Each frame has a different picture, with all those holes top and bottom so it can be held in the camera. It was just like that, and each frame showed a different part of my life, all running very smoothly past my eyes. I know it sounds weird, but that was what I saw. Very interesting, really. The car finally came to a stop. Gary was able to get out of the car, and I could hear him sounding very stressed, trying to get the people who'd gathered around to put their cigarettes out because there was a whole tank load of petrol streaming out everywhere. Dave and I were stuck in the car, and Dave was pretty badly injured. I was squeezed into this tiny squash space in the back and couldn't get out. Luckily, I hadn't lit that cigarette. One shudders to think what would have happened if I had. It turned out that a young 16-year-old who'd only had his bike license for 2 weeks had been riding a brand new 650cc Yamaha and was coming down from much further up the coast, the opposite way to us. He'd been traveling with a friend who was way, way behind him, going at a much more sensible speed. The reckless Yamaha rider had been car hopping all the way down, taking risks, his friend said. He'd then come out from behind a big semi-trailer, hence my fear of them on the way, and crashed right into the front of our car on the driver's side, which pushed us, then flipped us over and sent us spinning down the road. The roof of the car was so damaged and squashed that it had moved over to the right. My Gary had burned one of his fingers because he had been trying to hold the roof up so hard that one of his fingers pressed onto the road, not the roof. If I had my seatbelt on, I would have died. Instead of being tossed away, I would have collided with the road and my head would have been dragged along it as we skidded. But as I didn't have the belt on, I'd been thrown into the middle of the back seat where I'd been relatively safe. But only because I'd stopped myself from lighting the cigarette, that would have ignited the petrol. The 16-year-old was sadly dead, and his mate was devastated. He told us then about the car hopping, risk-taking, and crazy driving. We later took pictures of the car at the wreckers, and our friends also came to look at it. The car had been completely opened up by the bike and truck like a tin can, and it was so squashed and broken no one could believe any of us had got out alive. There was no way for us to have survived in that car, but somehow we did with the grace of God and huge help from our darlings, angels, and guides. I like to think it was Archangel Michael who spoke to me that night. I would really love to know for sure. Wow, that's an intense one. Okay, a couple more really short ones here. This is Graham's story. I'd enjoyed a lovely day in the country with the family and the dog, and we were driving home along the main road to Norwich. We were all feeling relaxed and happy, and were bowling along in the car at roughly 60 miles an hour, none of us expecting any problems to crop up. But suddenly, as the car approached a blind bend, I heard a voice saying, "Slow down." I felt a need to obey right away, and it's a good job I did. Because just around the bend, there was a young girl standing in the middle of the road holding a push bike. Because I'd slowed down, I was able to stop in plenty of time and go around her. But if I hadn't listened to the voice in my head, I would have definitely run her down and possibly killed her. Which just goes to show that one must always listen to one's angels. Okay, last one here, Jackie's story. We were driving home late one night. My hubby, Stuart, was driving our Volvo Estate because I couldn't stand the bright oncoming headlights and tended to drive like a frightened rabbit in the dark, clinging to the edge of the road, which I could barely see. The radio was playing country music songs, and in hindsight, maybe heavy metal would have helped us more. I tried to stay awake, but I kept drifting. Every time I prized my eyes open, Stuart looked wide awake and happy, so eventually I gave in and fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept along the A303, but suddenly a voice literally screamed in my ear, "Wake up!" My eyes shot open to see Stuart slumped in his seat, head back, and the car heading straight for a concrete bridge support on the wrong side of the road. It was my turn to scream then. Stuart woke up, grabbed the wheel, and the car just cleared the pillar. It was doubly lucky that there had been no other vehicles to crash into us as we'd veered right across to the wrong side of the road. Wow. So this goes to show you what I love about these stories is, yeah, sure, there's lots of stories where no angels come to intervene, right? We've heard lots of stories where someone didn't make it out. The kid who crashed into the car didn't make it out on the motorcycle. What I love about it, though, is knowing that there's sort of, this fail-safe there. If that's something that's meant to happen, if you're meant to stay here, there's mighty forces will come to your aid, and you'll only leave. What I take great reassurance is in believing and knowing in my heart that when we're done here, we leave. When our work here is done, we leave, and not a second sooner. And part of your experience may be being saved by, an angel, guardian angel, whatever it is, right? Higher self, whatever's going on there. But just knowing that you are, for any of you out there who are really feeling fearful about what's going on with coronavirus and, the state of the world and, all the things that are collapsing, and just become, as I talked about on Monday, the calm and the eye of the storm. Become that eye of the storm, knowing that when it's time to go, you'll go. And you never really go. You just change states, right? Death is a birth and birth is a death. You are here to experience all the things that are coming your way, and how gracefully you walk through the fire is what's important. And you ultimately, anyone, if you're scared of ever losing yourself or anyone that you care about, everyone is here. It's a perfectly woven tapestry, this life experience, even though it may appear chaotic. And if you're meant to go, you're going to go. And if there's more lessons to learn, once all the lessons are gotten from this experience, just like any relationship, that's when it's over, right? Relationship, same way. You come together because there's an opportunity for growth, then a natural separation occurs. And same thing with your life, your relationship with the avatar that is you, right? Once you've learned everything you can from it, you're going to find an exit, because there's more learning in more ways, in unique scenarios, in different types of relationships, maybe in different lifetimes, different time periods, different planets. Who knows, right? Source is vast. We'll find out. But, my bet is you are experiencing so many times. There's so many different characters in so many ways that we can't even fathom. And so not to cling so tightly to the story, this identity of self, and just trusting the process. It's I was talking to my son, and he used a great analogy with a friend of his who's very tightly wound and kind of fearful. And he was like, talking about, I believe they were talking about psychedelics and, consciousness and that sort of thing. And the friend was like, I would never do psychedelics. I would never want to lose control or, and how tight he's wound, and Bradley, my son, was like, look, the more tightly you hold on to your life, it's kind of like being in the ocean and, the current's pulling you out and you're fighting and you're exhausting yourself. However, if you can learn how to ride the waves and surf the waves, that's what's the way to navigate our reality, right? Gracefully surfing the waves of the ocean of existence, as opposed to flailing and flapping and exhausting ourselves and then drowning miserably, right? Instead, learning how to be a surfer, because surfing reality and existence and knowing that it wants you to learn how to be a surfer of your experience, I think that is such a powerful lesson. So take that, ride that wave with you to get today as you journey on, everyone. I also have a song to leave you with. This is a collab from two of my favorite artists, actually. Tor, T-O-R, remixed this song by Frameworks, and the song is called Breaking Down. It's a new one. Love it. Hope you do too. Until next time, journey well. Love you all so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat-style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.